Welcome back. Okay, let's be real for a second. In our hyper-connected world, we are constantly bombarded with just a never-ending stream of information. I mean, from the exact moment we wake up and check our phones to the minute we finally go to sleep, we are facing an absolute overload of data, updates, and alerts. But, as you probably guessed, not all of this information is created equal. Today, we're going to put on our media scientist hats and dissect the very anatomy of what we consume daily. We're going to figure out the precise framework that journalists use to filter through the deafening noise of the world and deliver the stories that actually matter.
It really all begins with this one foundational question. What actually separates a random event from a front-page headline? Millions of things happen across the globe every single minute, right? A tree falls in a forest, a local business opens its doors, a massive policy is signed into law. Yet only a tiny, carefully curated fraction of those events ever make it to your screen or your morning paper. So today, we are going to uncover the specific, almost mathematical criteria that journalists use to decide exactly what makes the cut and what gets left on the cutting room floor.
All right, here is our roadmap for today's explainer. First, defining the news. Second, the journalist's playbook. Third, what makes it newsworthy. And finally, the perfect news story. Let's jump right in.
Section 1. Defining the news, the basics of reporting.
At its absolute core, what is news? Well, it's defined as a report of a current event. We're talking about timely, relevant information on people and events, which is then shared with an audience, whether that's via print, broadcast, or the internet. Fundamentally, it's information about something that has literally just happened, or is going to happen very soon. It's not just some random assortment of facts thrown together. It is a highly structured delivery of the present moment, packaged specifically to keep you informed about your immediate reality.
Moving on to Section 2. The journalist's playbook, ethics and characteristics.
Take a second to really absorb this quote from the journalist's code of ethics because it's super powerful. I shall scrupulously report and interpret the news, taking care not to suppress essential facts, nor to distort the truth by omission or improper emphasis. The code actually goes on to explicitly recognize the duty to err the other side and the absolute duty to correct substantive errors promptly. And, this isn't just a friendly suggestion, it's the vital oath of the profession. A journalist's job isn't to tell you what to think. Their job is to provide a perfectly clear, undistorted mirror reflecting what is actually happening.
But look, we all know that the modern media landscape can be incredibly murky. We have to contrast that solemn ethical duty with the whole concept of fake news. When the filter of ethics totally fails, like when facts are suppressed, when truths are distorted just for clicks, or when opinions are intentionally disguised as objective reporting, the entire system breaks down. Fake news is literally the exact opposite of the journalistic oath. It's the weaponization of information rather than the sharing of it.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why actual news must adhere to a very strict set of characteristics to maintain our trust. Real news is entirely factual, absolutely nothing is invented. It is objective, meaning it doesn't take sides, and it's strictly separated from opinion. It's got to be concise and clear, cutting right through the noise. Obviously, it has to actually capture the reader's interest, and fundamentally, it is designed to inform or explain, serving to be enlightening, sometimes entertaining, uplifting, and ultimately instructive. Next time you read a piece of media, you can use this exact checklist to figure out if you're consuming rigorous journalism or just something else entirely.
All right, on to Section 3. What makes it newsworthy? The news values.
The very first news value is timeliness. In journalism, immediacy is everything. You always have to ask, is it about a recent event? Recent events inherently have way higher news value than older ones. Take an expected oil price hike, for example. Say, diesel going up over 12 pesos on March 15th. That is highly newsworthy on March 14th and 15th because it affects people right in that moment. But if you try to publish that same story 3 months later, its news value drops to zero. Timeliness is basically the ticking clock of journalism.
Next up is significance, and a golden rule here is that the significance of an idea, issue, or event is entirely relative to who is actually reading it. Think about a list of COVID alert levels for specific regions like the National Capital Region, Baguio City, and Cebu. To someone living in Tokyo or London, this exact list might not be super significant, but to a local publication targeting audiences living in those exact Philippine regions, this is front-page, vital information. A story is literally only as significant as its impact on the people reading it.
Okay. Then we have one of the most fascinating news values for sure, oddity. The definition is wonderfully simple but powerful. Anything that deviates from the normal course of events is newsworthy. Now, what's usual in one society might be highly unusual in another, so this definitely varies across cultures. But humans are just hardwired to notice when patterns break. If everything is happening exactly as expected, well, there's no story. But the second something unusual happens, the second that norm is shattered, our brains lock on, and boom, the journalist has a story.
I mean, talk about oddity in action. These examples perfectly capture that bizarre deviation from the norm. Imagine seeing a picture of strangely shaped, almost human-looking carrots. It's odd. It completely catches your eye. Or how about a viral news clip of a man literally riding a child's toy horse down a busy street to protest the high prices of gasoline? It's absolutely ridiculous. It's totally outside the normal course of a daily commute, and that is exactly why it made the news. It leverages tasteful humor and sheer strangeness to grab our attention.
Building right off that, our next value is proximity. This refers to the nearness of the event to the intended audience. Does it concern your immediate community? News reporters know for a fact that audiences are inherently way more interested in events happening right in their own neighborhood. A small fire down your street will almost always command more of your immediate attention than a massive industrial incident halfway across the globe. We just care most about what is physically closest to us.
And finally, rounding out our core values, we have people. At the end of the day, most news is just automatically human-centric. It is very rarely driven purely by non-human sources. Even if a story is about a massive storm, a cool new technology, or a wild fluctuation in the stock market, the core of the reporting will always center on how those things impact people. Journalism is just the act of humans explaining the human experience to other humans. Which brings us to our final section, Section 4, the perfect news story, putting it all together. When you look at a major front page, like from the Manila Bulletin, for example, you'll see that the biggest stories don't just hit one single value. They hit several of them at once. Take a headline like, Government Eyes COVID Testing of 3.3 M Filipinos by Sept. Why is that the top story? Because it absolutely stacks those values. It is highly timely, it has massive proximity and significance for the local audience, and of course, it involves millions of people. Or think about a headline covering Japan's PM Shinzo Abe resigning over health problems. That's an unexpected deviation, an oddity in the political norm, that also happens to have massive global significance.
And that brings us to the magic number 5. One of the absolute best ways to decide the ultimate strength of a news story is to check how many of those 5 core criteria it actually meets. Is it timely? Is it significant? Does it have oddity? Does it have proximity? And is it about people? A story that is new, interesting, highly significant to the local area, and impacts a massive amount of people is going to be an absolute powerhouse of a headline. The more boxes it checks, the bigger the news. Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought to conclude our explainer today. Next time you open your favorite news app, scroll through your social media feed, or look at a front page, I challenge you to be a media scientist. Ask yourself, how many news values does your daily feed actually meet? Are you reading stories that are genuinely significant and timely, or are you just getting distracted by oddities with absolutely no real proximity to your life? By understanding this anatomy of news, you can really take control of your own information diet. Thank you so much for joining me to deconstruct these headlines today, and keep learning.